All right, everyone, get ready because today we're diving deep into something really cool. Multiplier. Have you heard
Multipliers.
of this?
Oh, yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's from this book, Multipliers. How the best leaders make everyone smarter. And
It's a good one.
yeah, and the idea is that some leaders, these multipliers, they can get like twice the output from their teams.
Yeah, twice. Can you imagine?
Incredible. Like, what are they doing that the rest of us aren't?
Right. It really makes you think, like, what's their secret sauce?
Totally. So,
Oh.
and they don't just talk about theories in the book, they actually use these real world examples, which is what I love.
Oh, yeah, some really interesting ones, too.
Like who?
Well, they've got Israeli tank commanders,
Wow.
youth rugby coaches, even a CEO who basically decided to take on the whole auto industry with his vision for electric cars.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. That's amazing. Okay, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, can we take a step back for a second?
Yep.
What is the core problem that this book is trying to solve? I mean, most of us are just trying to, like, survive the day, right?
Yeah, that's real, isn't it? I mean, pretty much every leader I talk to feels that pressure to do more with less.
Oh, for sure.
But the interesting thing is that the authors of Multipliers, they argue that the issue isn't really a lack of resources.
Hmm.
It's that we're not fully using the intelligence that already exists within our teams.
So it's not that we're not smart enough.
Yeah.
It's that something's blocking us from, like, accessing that potential.
You got it. We're operating way below our true potential, and it's often because of, well, how we're being led.
I could see that.
So the book really digs into this by looking at two types of leaders, diminishers and multipliers. And, both types might be super smart,
Okay.
but their core assumptions about intelligence are just completely different.
How so?
Well, a diminisher sees intelligence as this, like, scarce resource.
Okay.
They're the genius in the room,
Got it.
and everyone else just needs to be told what to do.
Yeah.
But a multiplier,
Yeah.
they believe intelligence is abundant,
Oh, interested.
and more importantly, that it can be cultivated.
So their role is more about creating an environment where everyone can kind of shine.
Exactly. It's about creating the conditions where everyone's intelligence can, like, flourish.
So instead of hoarding all the knowledge and ideas, they're spreading them around, letting everyone contribute.
I like that. A multiplier would say, hey, we're all in this together. Let's use all the brain power we've got to solve this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. To make it even clearer, maybe we can imagine this chart
Okay.
with diminisher on one side and multiplier on the other,
Mm-hmm.
and we could compare, like, how they approach different things.
Love that.
Like, let's say, managing talent.
Okay, yeah.
A diminisher might think, ugh, they'll never figure this out without me, right?
Totally. Micromanaging all the way.
But a multiplier would be more like, people are smart, they'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to give them the space and support to do it.
That's the multiplier mindset, trusting your people to rise to the occasion.
And then how about their approach to mistakes?
Oh, that's a big one. Because a diminisher, their first instinct is blame.
Oh.
They're all about who messed up. How could you be so stupid?
Yeah.
But a multiplier sees a mistake as, an opportunity to learn and grow.
So they're not afraid to make mistakes themselves, and they encourage their team to experiment and take risks.
You got it. Because they know that's how innovation happens.
It's funny because I think we all know intellectually that mistakes are part of the learning process.
Right.
But then you get to a work environment where there's that fear of messing up, and it's like you just clam up.
Totally. You end up playing it safe and not taking any risks, which ultimately hurts everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, let's look at giving direction. How does each type of leader handle that?
Yeah, good one.
So a diminisher loves to just tell people exactly what to do.
Do this, this, and this, and don't deviate.
Exactly. Step by step. No room for creativity.
But a multiplier, they're more about laying out the goal or the opportunity
Exactly. They paint the big picture.
and then challenging the team to figure out the how.
They say, here's where we need to go. Now you figure out how to get us there.
That's so much more empowering. It's like
Yeah.
you're actually being treated as an intelligent human being, not
Yeah.
just a cog in a machine.
I think that's a key difference, right? Multipliers see their team members as partners in problem solving, not just order takers.
It reminds me of that saying, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day.
Yeah.
Teach a man a fish and you feed him for a lifetime.
Absolutely. It's about developing people's skills and abilities, not just getting the task done.
Okay, so we've talked about managing talent, mistakes, and giving direction.
Yeah, what about decision making?
Oh, another crucial one. So a diminisher, they're probably making all the decisions themselves. Or with a very small inner circle, right?
Yep, they're the lone wolf leader.
My way or the highway kind of deal.
But the multiplier, They operate very differently.
I'm intrigued.
They act as what the book calls a debate maker.
A debate maker. Okay, so they're not just making decisions solo. They're actually involving the team in the process.
Yeah, they're facilitating a discussion, getting everyone's input.
So they're not afraid of disagreement. They actually encourage it.
Exactly. Because they know that through debate, through rigorous back and forth, that's how you get to the best solutions.
That makes sense.
And not only that, but when everyone has a voice in the decision-making process, they're more likely to buy into the final decision, right?
Totally. So it's not just about making the right decision. It's about building consensus and getting everyone on board.
You got it.
Okay, last but not least, how about getting things done, execution?
Ah, yes, the rubber meets the road moment.
So my guess is a diminisher defaults to control.
Oh yeah, they're all about the spreadsheets and the checklists.
I need to know every detail, every step of the way.
Yep, micromanaging every little thing, which can be exhausting for everyone involved.
And what about the multiplier? What's their approach?
Well, they're more like what the book calls an investor.
Investor.
That's interesting. So they're giving people ownership of their work, they're providing resources.
So they're setting the stage for success.
Exactly. And they're holding people accountable for the outcomes, but they're not micromanaging the process.
They trust their team to get the job done.
And that trust, it goes a long way.
I've got to admit, this whole investor idea is really resonating with me. It's like you're not just handing out tasks, you're giving people a stake in the outcome.
Exactly. And that can make all the difference in their motivation and performance.
I'm really curious to hear more about how this all works in practice.
Well, to really understand the difference between these two leadership styles, let's talk about Vikram.
Okay.
So Vikram, he had this really unique experience working under both a diminisher and a multiplier during his time at Intel.
Oh, wow. What a contrast that must have been.
Right. So first, he worked for this guy, George. And George was like the ultimate multiplier. He created this environment where everyone felt like a smart SOB because he gave them the space to think for themselves and contribute their best work.
That's the kind of leader you dream of working for. Someone who makes you feel like you can achieve anything.
Right. But then Vikram got transferred to a different division at Intel.
Oh.
And this new manager was, well, he was brilliant, but he was a total control freak.
The classic diminisher.
Exactly. Vikram described him as an idea killer because he did all the thinking himself.
So even if you had a good idea, you wouldn't even bother bringing it up.
Pretty much, yeah. In meetings, this manager would just dominate the conversation and the team would just sit there in silence.
Wow, that's a stark contrast to George's team, where I imagine there were lively discussions and everyone was contributing ideas.
Totally. And, it wasn't just about feeling good.
Right.
The research shows that these multipliers, they actually get results.
I was going to ask about that.
It's significantly better results.
What kind of results are we talking?
The studies showed that they consistently got twice as much capability from their people.
Twice. That's insane. So it's not just a feel-good approach. It's a strategy that actually works.
Exactly. It's about maximizing the intelligence and potential of your team.
Okay, I am officially on board with this whole multiplier thing. But how do we actually do it? How do we become one of these amazing leaders?
Well, that's where the 5 disciplines come in, which is what we're going to unpack next. These are the concrete, actionable things that multipliers do differently.
Okay, I can't wait to hear about them. Okay, let's unlock these 5 disciplines. Where do we begin?
Well, the first discipline of a multiplier is being a talent magnet.
The talent magnet.
Yeah, and this doesn't necessarily mean building, the biggest team.
Okay.
It's more about attracting the right people.
Right.
And then this is key, getting the most out of their talents.
So making sure that everyone is really contributing at their highest level.
Yes, exactly. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. And the book has this fascinating example of a company called Hexel.
Hexel?
Yeah, it's a German pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
And get this, they operate without an org chart.
Wait, no org chart? How does that even work? It sounds like chaos.
Right. You'd think it would be total chaos, but they actually use what they call the amoeba model.
The amoeba model.
Okay.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So basically, people aren't stuck in these, rigid roles.
Okay.
Instead, they can kind of flow to different projects.
Oh, interesting.
Based on where their skills and passions are most needed at that moment.
So it's kind of like a living, breathing organism constantly adapting to its environment.
Exactly, like an amoeba, yeah.
I've never heard of a company running like that. That's wild. But do people just get to pick and choose what they want to work on?
Well, it's not a total free-for-all. There's still, some structure and oversight,
Right.
but there's a lot of trust and autonomy.
Okay.
For example, they talk about this employee, Ursula, who noticed all these inefficiencies in their IT systems. And instead of waiting for someone to tell her to fix it, she just went ahead and pulled together a team.
Wow.
And you know what? The company founders actually encouraged this kind of behavior.
So they weren't like, stay in your lane, that's not your job.
Nope. They were all about empowering people to take initiative and solve problems.
That's amazing. It sounds like they've created a culture where everyone feels like an owner, not just an employee.
That's a great way to put it. And, another really important aspect of being a talent magnet is looking beyond just the traditional resumes and titles.
Okay, so not just focusing on someone's formal qualification.
Exactly. Because brilliance can come in so many forms, right?
Totally. It reminds me of that quote, everybody is the genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid.
I love that quote. And it's so true, isn't it?
So how do these talent magnets actually go about finding those hidden gems?
Well, one thing they do is what they call genius watching.
Genius watching. I like the sound of that.
Right. So it's about paying close attention to your team members and what they do naturally and well.
So not just what they do at work, but what are their passions? What are they good at outside of work?
Exactly. What gets them excited? What do they talk about with the sparkle in their eye?
So it's about seeing the whole person, not just the employee.
You got it.
Okay, so we've got talent magnet. That's the first discipline. What's next?
Okay, the second discipline is the liberator.
The liberator. That sounds powerful.
It is, but before you picture someone storming the castle and freeing the prisoners, it's a little different in this context.
Okay, so not about literal liberation.
No, not quite, although it's about freedom in a sense. Liberators are the kind of leaders who create an intense environment, but not in a, tyrannical way.
Okay.
They challenge people to do their best work, but they do it in a way that feels empowering.
So they set high expectations, but they do it in a way that motivates and inspires.
Exactly. And a big part of that is how they handle communication.
Okay, how so?
Well, diminishers, they tend to dominate conversations, right? They're always talking, always telling people what to do.
Yeah, they're the ones who always have to have the last word.
But liberators, they're masters of listening.
So they're creating space for others to speak up, to share their ideas.
Exactly. They know that to get the best out of people, you need to actually listen to them.
It's funny because I think we all know intuitively that listening is important.
Right.
But then you get into these work environments where it's all about, look how smart I am, look how much I know. And it's like everyone else just shuts down.
Totally. And that's the opposite of what a liberator does. They create this environment of psychological safety where everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts and ideas.
So it's not just about being quiet. It's about actively creating that space for others to contribute.
Absolutely. And to really illustrate this, the book contrasts two leadership styles.
Okay, I love a good contrast. Lay it on me.
So we've got Jenna, this telecom executive who is known for being a bully. Yeah, she was really intimidating and people were terrified of her.
So she probably got things done, but I bet people weren't exactly thrilled to work for her.
You got it. People only did the bare minimum to avoid her wrath.
Fear might work in the short term, but it's not a sustainable strategy for building a high-performing team.
Exactly. And now contrast that with someone like Steven Spielberg.
Okay, Spielberg, the legendary filmmaker.
The one and only. And he's known for getting the absolute best out of his film crews.
Right, but I'm guessing it's not because he's a tyrant on set.
Not at all. In fact, he's known for creating a really collaborative and supportive environment.
So how does he do it?
Well, for one thing, he's a fantastic listener. He really values the input of everyone on his team, from the actors to the grips.
So he's creating that sense of psychological safety that we were talking about.
Exactly. People feel comfortable taking risks, sharing their ideas, because they know they won't be ridiculed or punished for it. That makes sense. And it makes me think, even if you're not a world-famous director, there are probably things we can all do to be more like Spielberg in our own workplaces.
Absolutely. And one technique that liberators use is something called labeling their opinions.
Labeling their opinions, what does that mean?
It's a really simple but effective way to avoid accidentally shutting down discussion.
Okay.
So, for example, instead of saying, this is how we're going to do it, which can sound very definitive.
Right, like there's no room for debate.
Exactly. A liberator might say something like, this is just my initial thought, but I'm really interested in hearing your perspectives.
So you're acknowledging that you don't have all the answers, And you're genuinely open to other ideas.
Exactly. You're inviting people into the conversation.
That's a really subtle but powerful shift. I like it.
Okay, ready for the third multiplier discipline.
Bring it on. I'm all ears.
The third discipline is the challenger. The challenger. Okay, so are we talking about someone who's like constantly pushing people to their limits, giving them these impossible tasks?
That's a common misconception about challengers, but it's not quite accurate. It's not about, throwing people into the deep end and watching them sink or swim.
Okay, so what is it about then?
It's about pushing people beyond what they think they're capable of, but in a way that inspires and empowers them.
So it's about setting a high bar, but also giving people the support and resources they need to reach it.
Exactly. And they do this by seeding opportunities instead of just giving answers.
What do you mean by seeding opportunities?
So instead of saying, here's the problem, go fix it, they might say something like, here's this amazing possibility, how do we make it a reality?
Ah, so you're sparking their imagination, getting them to think big and creatively.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be much more motivating than just being told what to do. But it must take a certain kind of leader to pull that off.
It does, and the book gives this great example of Shai Agassi.
Oh yeah, the electric car guy.
The one and only. So he was trying to, completely revolutionize the electric car industry, which was a massive undertaking.
Not exactly a small goal.
And his team described him as someone who makes the impossible possible, which I think captures the essence of a challenger.
That's so cool.
And they talked about how he would challenge them in a way that made them feel like they were part of something truly groundbreaking, something really special.
I bet that was an amazing experience to be part of that team.
Yeah, I can only imagine. But to contrast this, the book also talks about Richard, who was this chess-obsessed CEO.
Chess-obsessed. Okay, that sounds interesting.
Right, so he was super brilliant, but he used his intellect to kind of intimidate people rather than empower them.
Ah, so he was more interested in showing off how smart he was than actually helping his team succeed.
Pretty much, yeah. He loved to ask these gotcha questions in meetings, just to put people on the spot.
Oh, I hate those. It's like they're not really interested in your answer. They just want to make you look bad.
Exactly. And the worst part was, if he didn't know the answer to something, he would just, avoid the question altogether instead of admitting he didn't know.
Because it would bruise his ego to not be the smartest person in the room.
Exactly. So a true challenger is not about ego. It's about pushing the team to achieve amazing things together.
Okay, so we've got talent magnet, liberator, and challenger. 3 down, 2 to go.
You got it. Ready for number 4.
Hit me with it. What's the fourth discipline?
Okay, the fourth discipline is the debate maker. And before you say anything, I know what you're thinking.
Let me guess. Oh no, not another meeting where everyone's arguing and trying to one-up each other.
Exactly, but that's not what debate making is about at all.
Okay, good. Because I think we've all had enough of those kinds of meetings.
Totally. A true debate maker understands that the best decisions rarely happen in isolation.
Okay, so they're not just making decisions solo and then dictating them to the team.
Nope. They see debate as a really powerful tool for surfacing diverse perspectives and ultimately arriving at a more insightful and well-informed solution.
So they're not afraid of disagreement, they actually encourage it.
Exactly. And this is where those assumptions about intelligence come into play again.
Right, because a diminisher would probably see debate as a threat to their authority.
Totally. But a multiplier embraces debate because they know that it can lead to better outcomes.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's about harnessing the collective intelligence of the team, turning disagreements into productive discussions.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing there's a certain art to doing this well.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about letting everyone shout their opinions at random.
Right, there needs to be some structure, some ground rules.
And to see how this can work in a real-world scenario, the book compares the decision-making styles of 2 former U.S. presidents.
Ooh, okay, who we're talking about?
George W. Bush and Barack Obama.
Okay, 2 very different presidents.
Right, so George W. Bush, in his own words, was the decider. He was very much about going with his gut instinct.
So not a lot of time spent gathering information or soliciting different viewpoints?
Not really, no. He even admitted to not being a fan of homework, which in this context meant, reading briefing materials, doing research, engaging in debate.
It's more of a shoot from the hip kind of guy.
You could say that. And then you've got Barack Obama, who was known for assembling teams of rivals.
Rivals, that's interesting.
Yeah, he would deliberately bring together people with strong personalities and often opposing viewpoints.
Because he believed that friction, that diversity of thought, would ultimately lead to better decisions.
Exactly. He was really comfortable with disagreement and saw it as a valuable part of the process.
That's fascinating. So two very different approaches to decision making, and I bet they yielded very different results.
And to bring this down to a more, everyday business setting, the book looks at Let Ziob at Microsoft.
Okay, tell me about Let's.
So he was in a tough spot. He had to make some significant budget cuts.
Ouch, that's never fun.
No, it's not. But instead of just making those decisions unilaterally, he decided to turn to his team for input.
So he was like, hey, we're all in this together. Let's figure out the best way to handle this.
Exactly. But he didn't just, throw it out there and say, what do you guys think?
Right, because that could just lead to chaos and confusion.
Totally. So he laid out the reasons behind the budget cuts. He was very transparent about the situation.
Okay.
And he asked each team member to come prepared with data-driven recommendations.
So he was setting the stage for a really productive and, data-driven debate.
Exactly. He wanted to make sure it wasn't just a bunch of random opinions being thrown around.
And I bet he also established some ground rules to make sure the debate stayed, respectful and productive.
Oh, absolutely. He made it clear that everyone would have a chance to speak, that their opinions would be challenged but also respected, and that ultimately he would make the final decision.
So he was the debate maker, not the dictator.
Exactly. And this is such a great example of how you can make tough decisions, but do it in a way that empowers your team.
Okay, so we've got 4 disciplines down: talent magnet, liberator, challenger, and debate maker. Give me number 5.
Okay, the fifth and final discipline of a multiplier is the investor.
The investor. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So this goes beyond just, money.
Yep.
It's about investing resources, trust, and ownership in your team.
So it's about creating a culture where people feel empowered to take charge and make things happen.
Precisely. And a great example of this is Eliben Bhatt, who founded SIWA, which is a trade union for self-employed women in India.
Wow, that's amazing.
Right. And she had this remarkable ability to identify and nurture leadership potential in others.
So she wasn't just managing people, she was creating leaders.
Exactly. And to contrast this, think about the classic, micromanaging sports coach.
Oh, I know that type. They're always
Yeah.
yelling from the sidelines, never letting the players think for themselves.
Exactly. They might think they're being helpful, but they're actually stifling the team's potential.
And it sends the message that you're not capable of figuring this out on your own, so I need to do it for you.
Which is the opposite of what an investor does.
Right, because an investor is all about empowering people to figure things out for themselves.
Exactly. They might offer guidance, they might provide resources, but they always hand the pen back when they're done.
Hand the pen back. I love that. It's such a great visual.
Right. It's a way of symbolically giving ownership back to the team.
So it's saying, I trust you to take this and run with it.
Exactly. And investors also start by making sure that ownership is clearly defined from the beginning.
So everyone knows who's responsible for what.
And they're not afraid to stretch people's roles, give them opportunities to tackle challenges that are just outside their comfort zones.
So it's about pushing people to grow and develop their skills, but I'm guessing it's also about being there to support them when they inevitably hit a roadblock.
Absolutely. They provide guidance and support, but they resist that urge to just jump in and take over.
Because they know that in the long run, it's better to let people struggle a bit.
Exactly. It's about developing independent, high-performing teams.
So they're playing the long game.
You got it. They're not just focused on the immediate task. They're thinking about developing their team for the future.
That's awesome. So we've explored all 5 disciplines of a multiplier: talent magnet, liberator, challenger, debate maker, and investor. That's a lot to take in.
It is, but it's important to remember that becoming a multiplier isn't about, flipping a switch overnight.
Right, it's a journey.
Exactly. It's about continuous learning and growth.
And I bet most of us already possess some of these qualities. It's just about amplifying them, right?
Absolutely. And shifting our mindset to one of abundance and possibility.
Okay, but what if you're currently working under a diminisher? Like, what if your boss is the opposite of everything we've been talking about? Does that mean you're stuck?
That's a great question, and one that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about.
Because it can feel pretty demoralizing to work for someone who's constantly, micromanaging you and shutting down your ideas.
Totally. But the good news is you can still cultivate your own multiplier style, even in a less than ideal environment.
Okay, that's reassuring. I'm really curious to hear more about that. So you're saying that even if my boss is like a total control freak, I can still create a more empowering environment for my own team.
Absolutely. You don't have to perfectly mirror your boss's style to be effective.
Okay, that's good to know.
Think of it this way. You can create these little pockets of multiplier magic within your own sphere of influence.
So even if the overall culture is kind of, top down and command and control,
Right.
I can still do things differently within my own team.
Exactly. And you know what? Sometimes seeing your team thrive as a result of your multiplier approach,
Yeah.
it might actually make your boss question their own methods.
So lead by example and hope it rubs off a bit.
Exactly. You never know. You might just inspire some positive change in the organization as a whole.
I like that. Okay, so besides leading by example, are there any other, tips or strategies that the book recommends for becoming a multiplier?
Yeah, they actually highlight 3 accelerators.
Accelerators. Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more.
The first one is called working the extremes.
Working the extremes.
Hmm.
That sounds intense.
It is, in a way.
Yeah.
So basically, it means figuring out your biggest strength
Okay.
and your most glaring weakness.
So not just trying to be, average at everything.
Right. It's about focusing your development efforts on those 2 key areas.
So double down on what I'm already great at and then really work on, neutralizing anything that's holding me back.
You got it. They give this example of Spencer, an executive who realized that his biggest strength was building relationships.
Okay, that's a good strength to have.
Right. But his weakness was avoiding conflict.
Yeah, that could be a tough one.
So he decided to focus on improving his conflict resolution skills, and it made a huge difference in his leadership.
Because then he could really advocate for his team and support them more effectively.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a great example. What's the next accelerator?
The next one is all about shifting your assumptions.
Shifting my assumptions. About what?
About intelligence. Remember how we were talking about how diminishers and multipliers have these fundamentally different views on intelligence?
Yeah, the whole scarcity versus abundance thing.
Exactly. So this accelerator is about consciously adopting the assumptions of a multiplier.
So instead of assuming that people need constant direction, I start from the belief that they're smart, capable, and can figure things out with the right support.
Exactly. It's a real mindset shift, and it can have a huge impact on your leadership style.
Because then you naturally start asking more questions, giving more ownership, creating that more empowering environment.
Precisely. You're basically rewiring your brain to see the potential in everyone.
I like it. Okay, what's the third accelerator?
The third one is the 30-day multiplier challenge.
Challenging.
Oh.
All right, I'm game. What do I have to do?
It's pretty simple, actually. You pick one specific multiplier practice that you want to work on,
Okay.
and then you commit to using it consistently for 30 days.
So taking these concepts and actually putting them into action.
Exactly. Because it's one thing to read about it, but it's another thing to actually experience it for yourself.
Right, that's where the real learning happens.
And another thing that can really help is connecting with other aspiring multipliers.
So finding a community of people who are also on this journey.
Exactly. Because you can learn from each other, share experiences, and hold each other accountable.
It's like a support group, but for people who want to become amazing leaders.
I love that. A support group for multipliers.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
We talked about the 5 disciplines of a multiplier.
Talent magnet, liberator, challenger, debate maker, and investor.
Yeah. And we've also talked about some strategies for actually putting these ideas into practice.
Yeah.
Even if you're not in the ideal environment.
Exactly. And I think the key takeaway here is that everyone has the potential to be a multiplier.
That's a really empowering message.
It is. It's not about some innate quality that some people have and others don't.
Right. It's a skill set that can be learned and developed.
And it's a journey, not a destination.
That's a good point. You don't have to be perfect right away. It's about continuous improvement.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into multipliers today,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with this thought. The impact of being a multiplier, it goes way beyond just, results.
Okay. You're well away.
It's about creating a ripple effect of growth and development that can transform not just your team, but also the individuals on it.
That's what I love about this approach. It's not just about getting more done. It's about helping people become their best selves.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty inspired to go out there and be a multiplier.
That's awesome. And I have no doubt that you will make an incredible multiplier.
Thanks for that. And thanks for joining us today for this deep dive into multipliers. We'll be back next time with another insightful exploration. But until then, keep seeking knowledge, keep challenging yourself, and keep multiplying the brilliance around you.